going over the CDBG topic most specifically, but we will have time for questions on all CDBG home. Again, my name is Schulte. I'm the CDBG program coordinator. With me is Jeff Hasser, a CDBG grant manager. Again, please mute your phones by pressing *1. We'll get a lot of feedback on our end if there's other chatter going on. If anybody has any questions, please type them into the chat bar in the bottom. We'll do our best to answer them all at the end of the presentation. Again, this webinar is for all project sponsors with current CDBG construction awards, as well as CDBG awardees. And we'll cover the claims process in general, eligible expenses for homeowner repair and rental rehab projects, eligible expenses for all other RFP, construction, rehab, demo, stuff like that, as well as some updates to the CDBG construction claim form. We've made some changes going forward, and those will all come into effect in January 1st of 2016. How to complete a claim correctly. There are some common errors that come in a few times. And we're going to try to address those now so that we can get everything in quickly and process as quick as possible. And we are actually not going to talk about the Housing Trust Fund repair claims. We'll be transitioning to a new Housing Trust Fund manager, and we'll have another webinar about that in the future. We'll be having a home webinar given by Sam Spurtle and Devin Day, the homes team. That'll be on December 8th at 2:30 in the afternoon. Please contact Devin if you have any questions or if you have any home claim questions. So to begin, here are some of the common issues we have with our claim submissions. Some of your expenses entered are before the actual contract start date. So those start dates sometimes jump around a bit, just depending on when we get the RCA completed, when the environmental review is done. So you guys really need to check up on your contract start date and make sure all expenses occur after that date. Expenses are before the RCA approval date. That basically is the environmental review process. If any expenses are incurred before that date, we will be unable to pay for those. And that can be a pretty big deal sometimes. Expenses can be claimed in the wrong budget lines, so we'll have program delivery costs that are actually being claimed in construction. And we'll go over which is eligible for what in a minute. Documentation is not sufficient for approval, so there's not invoices submitted for anything. And we just aren't able to see what the expense is actually for. Admin costs are not allowable, so any staff hours related to actually administering the grant, creating the claim, or doing quarterly reporting, those are not allowable. Now, if it's program delivery, such as overseeing construction management, that is eligible, and we'll go over that in a minute. The claim cover form is often not on organization letterhead and doesn't include the address to mail the check to. That's kind of important because you want you guys to get paid and set the right address. Sometimes the accounting report or detail of expenses forms are incorrect. Sometimes the math is wrong, or there's been budget updates. We need those to reflect the actual budget in the contract. The MEB, WEB, VB verification forms have sometimes been incorrectly filled out. This helps us with our reporting both to the city and to HUD. So we need those filled out correctly. And any pending amendments can prevent us from approving claims. So if there's an extension and we're out of the official contract's end date, we'll have to wait until that extension is actually fully executed before we can pay out claims. And this is just kind of how we feel if we get some incorrect claims. And that's kind of a reflection on us. We haven't, given you guys the tools you need to be successful with CDBG. So that's kind of the purpose of this webinar, is to, make sure you guys have what you need to get us everything correctly. And again, please do not incur any until an environmental review has been completed and you've gotten your RCA form back. Any costs before this date will be ineligible, and that could be a large chunk of your award if you've gone through an acquisition before the RCA has been completed. So this is just an overview of the claims process in general. Starting from the very beginning when the RCA form is issued, and this begins as you guys submit your environmental request to now Gina Bush-Hayes. This is the new environmental review manager. She'll be reviewing all of those. And then after that, specs will be written for projects, bids will be received and approved. And please double check the policies and procedures manual for just over $100,000. A project over $100,000 requires public bidding. So please look into the policies and procedures manual for that process. After the bids are approved, the RCA form is out. Expenses can then be incurred. Anything after those dates will be eligible for reimbursement, provided DMD has approved that expense. Throughout the life of the award, you will probably be submitting partial completion forms or final completion payment request forms. We'll be needing these signed off by our rehabilitation specialists, Gib Craybill and Paul Coteen. You've probably worked with them in the past if you have a current award with us. We need those for every partial payment request on a construction award or final payment request on a homeowner repair award and a rehab award, and so on. Additionally, if Davis-Bacon applies to your project, we'll need a Davis-Bacon payment request form. This is signed off by Dina. She has been the Davis-Bacon compliance monitor for a while now, and all Davis-Bacon requests should go through her. Following that, you're getting the final or partial completion forms in and all backup documentation. You'll compile all of that into your claim and submit that to us. Once that's submitted, the city makes every attempt to pay that claim within 30 days. Usually it is much shorter than that, usually within a week or two. If we're having a crazy month, we might take up to 30 days, but that is in our policies and procedures and allows us that time. Once we determine all of the documentation is sufficient, everything's there, everything's an eligible expense, we'll send it to accounts payable for disbursement. That usually takes about 2 weeks, sometimes less, just depending on their workload as well. And then following that, a check is mailed, and that takes usually about a week. Again, please refer to the policies and procedures for additional steps on this. And all claims can be mailed to us prior to submission for just an initial review if you have any questions as well. So these are the budget lines for the two types of projects, the two most common types of projects we deal with. On the left-hand side, we have the homeowner repair and rental rehab budget lines, and those are limited to program delivery and construction costs only. And we'll go over what expenses fall under each category in just a moment. On the right, we have all other RFP projects, so construction, rehab, demolition, and stuff like that. And there's a number of different budget lines that can come in on that. And not all projects will include every budget line, but possible ones are acquisition, environmental testing, demolition, soft costs, hard costs, and developer fee. And we'll go over which is an eligible expense for each one of those in just a moment. So to begin with our budgets, we'll look at homeowner repair and rental rehab. And specifically talking about program delivery costs, and those costs are those that can be directly tracked by address. And they include soft costs and client-related costs that are necessary for actually carrying out the homeowner repair award. And that's capped at about a maximum of 20% of the entire award. And you can see this is a list of the eligible program delivery expenses. Some of these have been claimed as construction costs in this grant year and past grant years. So we want to reiterate that we'll be changing this as of January 1st, 2016. All these below expenses will be only allowed as program delivery expenses. For example, some recording fees and title searches, as well as loan closing fees have been claimed as construction costs. Going forward, starting January 1st, those will have to be under the program delivery expense line, as well as construction management if it's carried out by a project sponsor staff. If it's carried out by a contractor, that would be a contractor expense. But again, that is subject to DMD approval, and we'll need to see copies of those contracts. Some ineligible expenses as of January 1st will be office supplies and utilities. those are just too hard to track for us what is actually being used for the homeowner repair award. So those will be ineligible as of January 1st, as well as staff salaries as it relates to admin, so such as submitting claims, quarterly reports, stuff like that will be ineligible. Construction costs, pretty easy to recognize. Any materials or labor directly related to carrying out the homeowner repair or owner rehab activities. So the plumbers, his materials, his labor, all that, as well as any lead remediation, asbestos, mold remediation, as well as utility connections and related costs. Rehab management, if it's performed by an outside contractor, is an eligible construction cost. But again, this is subject to our approval. We just want to make sure that everything is eligible, so please contact us before if you have any questions. Moving on to the RFP project budget lines, and starting with stock costs. These are expenses that are not considered direct construction costs. So engineering fees, architectural fees, attorney fees, stuff like that will be eligible as soft costs. Again, homeowner repair and rental rehab awards do not have a soft cost line item. Most of those will be lumped into program delivery. And these will need to be approved by us before any claim submission. They will also be outlined in your contract as well. Moving on to hard costs. These are costs for any materials or labor directly related to construction of the CDBG project. So again, any sort of plumbing, electrical, stuff like that is an eligible hard cost. Some other common allowable budget lines will be acquisition, demolition, environmental testing. And again, this is a non-exhaustive list. If you have questions or need an additional line, that'll come up during contract creation and will be considered on a case-by-case basis. Another thing we'd like to point out is the developer fee line. This is an optional portion of any RFP award that the project sponsor can claim once a project is completed. This is only eligible for RFP projects. It's a 12% max for rehabilitation projects and 8% max for new construction projects. And for any CDBG contracts that are for acquisition only, they will not be eligible to receive a developer fee. CDBG contracts that include acquisition as part of the project, but also include a rehab or a new construction project on that as well, will be eligible to claim the appropriate developer fee. And this fee can only be claimed after all other expenses have been claimed and the rehab specialist has signed the completion certificate. And now, we're just going to go over a quick overview of how to complete a construction claim correctly. This sheet on the right is going to be a new sheet for the 2016 grant year. It's been updated to add a few lines in. That way you guys will be more aware of what every supporting document is required. One thing that we have not really dealt with in the past is the Universal Relocation Act Voluntary Acquisition Letter. This is a letter to the owner of any property that is being acquired with CDBG funding, and we'll need to receive these for any acquisition cost that's being reimbursed. And again, you guys will receive this claim form on our link, so you can look over that as well. And if you have any questions, please enter that into the chat bar on the side. This is the claim summary form. You all have been dealing with this for quite some time, so pretty familiar with it. Some things we'd like to point out, though, is the invoice number. We're trying to standardize that just so it's easier for us as well as accounts payable to track that. So we're going to be looking for this format in the invoice number. So the last 2 digits of the grant year, the last 4 digits of your PO number, and then whatever claim number this actually is. Please enter your invoice number that way. And please double check that you're using the correct purchase order number. Sometimes we've received, claims with a purchase order number for a different project they're working on, or it's actually the requisition number, which is a completely different number. So please double check that your purchase order number is correct. We will run into some accounting issues if we do submit it that incorrectly, and it will take some time to process. The contract period should match the begin and end dates on your executed contract and any amendments after that. So please keep that updated as amendments go through or as any dates are updated. The coverage period will be the range of dates in which the expenses are incurred. So if you have your first expense started on October 1st and the last one was October 31st, you'll enter those dates as the coverage period dates. The lines in the description section should match whatever the lines in your contract budget are. So for homeowner repair, it'll be program delivery and construction costs. Please make sure those match up and are updated with any amendment that goes through. This form cannot be modified except for obviously the data that you enter. So please don't change it in any way. And submission of this form must be the original, must include an original signature. Photocopies will not be accepted, and it must be on your letterhead, including a MIL2 address that accounts payable can match it up with. The next form in the claim template is the CDBG accounting report. Again, this form hasn't changed, but we just wanted to reiterate all of the columns that are in it. This is basically just a summary of the expenses in the claim, and the budget categories will be the budget lines that are in your contract. The top fields will auto-populate if you enter them correctly on the claim summary form. That'll be carried out through the rest of the claim template as well. So in the budgeted amount, that'll match up with your contract budget amount to be claimed. That'll be the total of what is being claimed in the submission. The total amount prior claimed should be updated with each claim, and you will all have to do the math for that. And the amount claimed to date and balance available, those will auto-calculate as long as the second two columns are correct. Please double check your math and make sure all the budgeted amounts are updated as any amendments go through and any claims go through as well. The third page of the claim submission form is the detail of expenses sheet. This is basically a table of contents of all of the backup documentation within the claim itself. Please make sure that the order that it's in on the detail of expenses sheet is the order that it is in the claim itself. This will help us match these expenses up quickly and get your claim out quickly as well. So again, the top fields will auto-populate, and all other fields will need to be entered manually. Please be detailed in the description column. Don't enter like construction costs or anything that big. Include something like roofing repairs so that if we have any questions on the invoice, we can match that up and make sure we have all that documentation. The details of salaries and wages. This is for any projects where the construction management or project management is done by a project sponsor staff. So if one of the staff members is a housing manager and is overseeing the homeowner repair, that is an eligible expense for salaries and wages, and that would go under program. And you would just want to include all of the timesheets from that coverage date. Make sure that the total number of hours matches with the total number of hours on the timesheet, and the eligible hours is outlined in the timesheet as well. These are only CDBG eligible hours, and make sure those are differentiated on your timesheets. Those last two fields will auto-populate if the hourly wage and hours are entered correctly, and should be updated every time there is a new claim. Any hours claimed before the contract start date will be ineligible, just because we haven't executed the contract for that and aren't able to pay for hours before. This page is the minority business enterprise, women business enterprise, and veteran business enterprise certification and participation form. So the prime contractor will be any contractors you all are working with directly. And for this, say a business is certified as both minority and women business, you will have to ask them which one they are self-certifying as, because for the city we are only able to count one. Anything other than that will be double counting. And if you are working with a general contractor, the general contractor will go under the prime contractor name section, and then all other subs will be below that, and you'll have to work with your general contractor to differentiate, which business is certified under which category, if at all. So on the very far right, the total amount claimed should match up to the amount that is in the claim submission for that particular contractor, and is double counted. If you have any questions on this, feel free to submit a preliminary claim to review electronically, and then we can double check that and work through all of those, any issues you might have. So this is a list of all the backup documentation, and it applies to both construction costs, or both RFP projects and homeowner repair projects. So for every claim, we're going to need to see proof of expense and payment, any supporting documents, so staff timesheets or contracts for contracted positions, as well as clear SAM.gov searches for any debarred contractors or subcontractors. We haven't been receiving SAM.gov searches in a lot of claims for this year, so please begin to do that. We just want to make sure we're not paying any federal dollars out to debarred contractors. Any mortgage or lien documents that are required of your contract, so for homeowner repair, or if there's anything related to an RFP project, we'll need to see any mortgages or liens for that, as well as the signed and approved RCA form. So this should be signed by the staff members certifying that the bids were properly bid out and accepted or denied for whatever reason. If this is your first payment and there's going to be multiple, there should be a request for partial payment. Again, this will need to be signed by either Paul or Gib. They are our rehab specialists. If this is a second or third or anything further payment, you'll need to send in a request for final payment. Again, it needs to be signed by a rehab specialist. If Davis-Bacon applies to your project, we'll need to see a signed form by Dina, signing that she certifies that. Any lead-based paint abatement or notices required, we'll need to see those as well. Again, something kind of new, but shouldn't be really new, is the Universal Relocation Act notice or the voluntary acquisition letter. Must accompany any request for acquisition reimbursement. And then finally, once the project is completed, this is the final claim. We'll need to see a completion of work specification certificate signed off by our rehab manager or rehab specialist. And all of this is outlined in the policies and procedures manual as well, and we'll be sending you this presentation afterwards too. So any changes to program delivery and construction costs will go into effect January 1st. So anything that has previously been claimed as construction costs, such as recorder fees or loan closing fees, that will all need to go under program delivery starting January 1st. If you have any questions, we're happy to work with you on what goes where. So for now, do you guys have any questions? We will check our chat box and see what has gone on in there. And start at the top. So we have a question. Can program delivery be incurred prior to the RCA being approved? No, that would be actually a breach of contract with us. So there's not any allowable expenses before the RCA is approved. And there's a question, can the MLO's time be included in program delivery? I'm not sure what the MLO position is, so I think that might be loan officer. So if we get clarification on that, what that position is, we'll try to answer that question. So we had a question, not an eligible admin cost. We are actually not able to pay for any admin costs. We don't have room in the budget for that. And admin is anything that is completing claim submissions, completing quarterly reports. That is an admin cost. A program delivery cost would be something that is, construction management, or working on coordinating contractors, that is an allowable program delivery or program delivery cost if that staff member is a member of the program sponsor staff. We have a question, are marketing costs such as postcards, postage, advertising, and eligible expense under program delivery?
This is Jenny Foltz, sorry. I would say those types of expenses are eligible under program delivery if they are specific to that construction project. So if you are printing intake application forms, for example, those are to a homeowner repair program, and those charges can be charged as program delivery costs.
So we have a question, if we are a Section 3 contractor, do we list ourselves as the general contractor?
That's a question that we can look more into and kind of give you a better answer. And after this, we'll probably list a FAQs of a lot of different questions that have been listed that we may not have answered here. So we'll go ahead and we'll write that down, and we'll get an answer back that we'll send out to everyone.
Next, I guess clarification, the MLO is the mortgage loan originator. So that question was, can the mortgage loan originator's time be included in program delivery? Yes, that would be an allowable program delivery expense. So feel free to include that. So follow up, in order to request the RCA, staff must go to the property to take photos. Can this time be included as program delivery? Well, actually, so if it is within the contract start date, whatever date the contract was executed on, that is an allowable expense.
However, I would caution that that would probably be one of the few times that a program delivery expense could be incurred prior to an RCA. Just as a general notification about that, but we are open again.
So we have a question, typical admin costs are now considered program delivery. It depends on your definition of admin. There are clear distinctions between the two, and if you have any specific questions, you can send that in, and we'll get that answered.
But again, I think we just want to stress that program delivery is specific. The general rule is it's specific to an address. You're specifically helping deliver a program to an address, and an admin is not eligible. So again, as Chase mentioned before, things like submitting reports or paying claims, those wouldn't be eligible expenses.
So we have a question similar to if the time before taking pictures for the RCA is eligible. We have client intake, making sure the property is not a floodplain, not in a wetland, 106 review submission, all occurs before the RCA is issued. Again, if this is after the contract start date, yes, that is all eligible, but just be careful that it is for the RCA submission itself.
And this is generally as it applies to homeowner repair, I would say, is where we have these exemptions where it can be prior to the RCA, but after the contract start date. So that's, but we understand, and we'll make an additional clarification in future webinars and explanations that homeowner repair is very different than typical construction contracts that we're doing.
So another question, why is time spent on reports and claims not eligible. These are required as part of the contract. These are actually admin costs and are, the administration of the CDBG grant, and these are ineligible for us.
We've looked into and discussed this with HUD as well, and this is kind of the guidance that we've gotten from them, and this is the guidance that we're passing along. And again, as Chase stressed, this is hitting against our admin cap, which we do not have additional funds for. So if HUD would come in and say, well, this is really admin costs, and they need to count against your cap, those are potentially funds that we would have to repay to HUD. That's why it's important that we're stressing this webinar and that we're stressing the difference between program delivery and admin.
And then a final question, recording fees, which now has to come out of admin. The line for recording fees would be program delivery. And most of our organizations are coming in, far below their program delivery cap. So we don't see a reason why that wouldn't be able to be included. But if you have any specific questions on that breakdown, you can ask us. And then our possible last question is, how are we going to monitor program delivery to make sure they are accurate if we only require timesheets?
I think that's a hard one to answer. I mean, technically, we could require very specific timesheets. We really don't want to do that. We want to be able to trust that you're tracking your time accordingly and reporting that appropriately. We will look at timesheets to ensure that they are specific to CDBG homeowner repair, and that's how we will be tracking the time that your staff is contributing towards program delivery costs.
And with that, any more questions? We're happy to answer. Sorry, no more questions. We'll go ahead and end the webinar. Again, all of these forms should have been emailed out to you, and they're all on our website, or they will be on our website at the end of the day. And we will also be posting a recording of this webinar on our website as well. So please forward this to anyone who missed it or you think should see this. Thanks again, guys, and have a good one.